Out of all of the cryptids in Fallout, maybe none are cuter, and also somehow uglier at the same time, than the squonks. These small, wart-ridden mole-like creatures prowl around at night trying to avoid contact with other small animals and people due to the shame they have with how they appear. And for those of you who don't know, these cryptids were seen depicted in one panel of Fallout 76 art and are actually based on real-life Pennsylvanian folklore set around the northern hemlock forests. In the famous novel The Fearsome Creatures of the Lumberwoods, written by William T. Cox in 1910, the myth of these beings was born, where William wrote in a novel read by citizens all across Pennsylvania at the time the following. The squonk is a very retiring disposition, generally traveling about at twilight and dusk because of its misfitting skin, which is covered in warts and moles. It is always unhappy. Hunters who are good at tracking are able to follow a squonk by its tear-stained trail, for the animal weeps constantly. When cornered and escape seems impossible, or when surprised and frightened, it may even dissolve itself in tears. A sad existence for a creature most Fallout players won't even know exists in the games, or at least in Fallout 76's West Virginia's Appalachia. In the real-life folktales, it was said that these monsters migrated from deserts to swamps to forests, but in Fallout canon, considering all we have is a picture, it's hard to say where they actually originate from. What we do know based on the art though, is that these cryptids, just like their real-life mythical creature counterparts, would constantly be consumed by tears and misery at just how ugly they really are. But if I had a say in it, I think these little squonks have a cute factor to them as well, and I wish there was at least a quest in game where we could become friends with one of these little guys and finally make them feel happy. Or just shotgun a couple for fun. Depends on how I'm feeling. Similar to the squonk, the Veggieman is yet another Fallout 76 cryptid from West Virginian folklore that has appeared in one image, but never in actual pure gameplay. However, unlike the squonk, the Veggieman is anything but a crying wimp. As the legend goes, this half-man, half-plant stands over 10 feet tall and can jump over 25 feet in the air in a single jump, reaching high speeds with immense power which it usually uses to escape from foes. Even more interestingly though, in the real-world account of this monster, it is said that a man named Jennings Frederick actually was able to communicate telepathically with the creature, which lured him in acting as a friend, after which it drained some of his blood. And if the idea of a giant tree sucking your blood doesn't make you uneasy, don't worry, because there actually might be a striking connection to another cryptid in Fallout 76 based on these facts. You see, earlier on the list I mentioned the Interloper, a potential agent of chaos or literal ancient demonic god that could spell the end of the universe. And during the dive into that creature, we learned about how it resembled an almost humanoid tree mix, along with being found right next to a group of dead explorers. But what I didn't mention was that next to those explorers are multiple jars and sickles, implying that at some point these poor souls may have actually been draining their blood as they perished. So could it be that the myth of the Veggieman actually ties in directly to the Interloper and its dark past? In the real-world story from Jennings Frederick, he also mentioned over and over how the Veggieman telepathically called to him, luring him in a way he couldn't resist. Sounds just like what we learned about the Interloper, and considering that they both have a very similar description in terms of appearance, that being both man and plant, maybe this could imply that the Interloper, Ugeltoth, and whatever these dark entities are in the Fallout universe that have been terrorizing humanity from behind the scenes for thousands of years are actually alien Veggiemen who would make great candidates for the NBA. And really, as absurd as that sounds, the direct connection between the never-before-seen Veggieman and Interloper is too great to ignore, and only time will tell if we get more answers in future Fallout 76 updates. But my bet is just like the mystery of the Dwemer from Elder Scrolls, Ugeltoth, the Interloper, and the Veggieman will forever have something to hide, because that's what makes them so interesting in the first place. To start off our list of the craziest and scariest Fallout cryptids, we actually are going to begin with the most terrifying of them all. Not a giant creepy being or shadowy figure, but something far, far worse. A communist. Known as the Bulgasari, these dangerous creatures which originate from Korean folklore can also be found in the Fallout universe, or at least in one radio entry from Rip Daring, famed cryptid hunter and American patriot who has inspired warm-blooded alpha males since the pre-war era. In episode 12 of his Rip Daring and the Cryptid Hunt radio series, which you can listen to in Fallout 76 as part of the Mutant Invasion update, we hear the following snippet about a so-called metal-munching menace.
Rip, it's called the Bulgasari, and for the 234th time, this is Korea.
Egad! You mean to tell me the communist cryptids trying to destroy capitalism can be found all the way out here? Hold that terrifying thought. My keen hunter senses have picked up a large tapir-like creature in the thick brush. That's not a bowl of gassy. Percival, what is this?
Sir, that is the Bulgasari.
Just as I suspected all along. Those eyes are glowing commie red. A sure sign it's ready for the age-old battle against truth, justice, and the American way.
If you are quite done being dramatic, sir, it appears to be consuming our supplies.
For almost another full 5 minutes, Rip and his crew continue to face off against the Bulgasari deep within this unknown jungle, as the fearsome beast both stalks and runs from its prey. But far and away the most interesting part of the whole encounter is what happens after shots are fired at the animal. Because right after Rip valiantly unloads multiple bullets into the cryptid's abdomen, this happens.
Wait, it's not dead.
Sir, Guinevere is right. Sensors indicate that the creature is not dead. It's not only unscathed, but it seems to have absorbed the shot and grown in size. My updated data now confirms this creature feeds on metals. It seems to be growing more powerful. May I recommend the cryo shells this time?
Somehow, this mythical creature shaped like a tiger with an elephant's nose and wise elder's beard, rather than being damaged by the bullets, absorbs them and uses the metal to grow in size and strength, hence its nickname, the Metal Munching Menace. And this story actually originates from ancient Korean mythology, where it was said that a Buddhist monk, on the run from the law due to Buddhism being outlawed in Goryeo-era Korea, created the animal in order to fight back against oppression. Whenever local militia or warriors sent by the government used swords or metal arrows against the beast, it simply absorbed them and grew stronger. And eventually, the locals started to use fire, which the beast also was resistant to, and used it to burn down the village that attacked it. So obviously, this first cryptid in the Fallout universe is one that pays homage to real-life folklore and history in Korea. And for those of you who don't know, there are countless examples like this in the Fallout series. For example, in Fallout New Vegas, chupacabras are mentioned. In almost every game, Bigfoot references or sightings are talked about, and there are a whole host of famous folk tales and monsters from different forms of mythology all across the games, if even in just one sentence of a quest, ranging from the Dullahan of Irish tales to the Gorgons from popular Greek mythology. In fact, all of the cryptids from Fallout 76 actually relate to folk tales from our real lives and pay homage to the stories told there, while combining in new ideas as well that make sense in the Fallout universe specifically. So while I want to focus this list primarily on things specific to the Fallout universe and what makes cryptids special there, I wanted to start off by showing how much there really is out there in the wastelands if you keep on digging. Described as a jackrabbit with antelope horns, the jackalope has been part of Fallout's alternative history timeline since the 1930s, where they were introduced as purely a hoax to trick gullible and unsuspecting Americans. During this time, many of these fake taxidermy mounts along with signs were made and spread all across America, showing up in multiple games including Fallout 76 and 2. In Fallout 76, you can put either a jackalope gun rack or plushie in your camp. And if you travel to Pueblos Curios northwest of Somerville, there is a sign depicting the mythical creature in all its glory. On top of this, in Rip Daring's radio podcast, he briefly mentions the jackalope as well, egging listeners on to get excited. In Fallout 2, Daniel Bird, the Enclave vice president, mentions when asked if the jackalope is an American creature that he intends to make it the national mascot one day. Furthermore, in Fallout 2, if you participate in Mole Rat Mambo, a pit fight minigame between captured mole rats, one of the names you can choose for your combatants is Jackalope, implying that the myth of these cryptids was at one point at a fever pitch all across America. However, the question still remains if these cute critters have any truth to them at all. By all accounts, it seems to be nothing more than a fun hoax for the American public. But as with all things that have so much prominence in pop culture, like say the aliens, sometimes there is a little truth to them as well. And in the case of the famed jackalope, maybe somewhere out there really is a jackrabbit with antelope horns, or at least something similar. In fact, even if they didn't exist pre-war, after the massive amounts of radiation were released into the wasteland, it wouldn't be far-fetched to find a creature like this nowadays. So deep in my heart, I still believe that this cute little rabbit might be out there for us to find, waiting in the patch notes of a future Fallout 76 DLC. While Fallout is no stranger to wacky creatures and mysteries, it's actually fairly seldom that we ever see oddities that stem from the ocean. Which is ironic because in our real lives, the strangest and craziest creatures almost always come from the deep blue. So for our next Fallout cryptid, we are taking a look at none other than the alleged ghoul whale, Old Peg, who is rumored to be hiding somewhere off the coast of Boston, waiting in the depths. But who exactly is Old Peg, and where does the mystery surrounding him stem from? Well, in Fallout 4, if you make your way to Bunker Hill, you can eavesdrop on the following conversation between two caravan guards.
You know, my rifle belonged to my grandpappy. Bravest son of a bitch that walked the wealth. That's a fact. He used to make the odd cap back in the day by gathering mirelurk eggs by the beach.
Bullshit.
No, it's good money if you're quick enough or good with a gun. And he was both. But he stopped doing it for good the day he saw Old Peg. With his own 2 eyes. Old Peg? Is that supposed to mean something? You don't know of Old Peg? You've covered enough miles to know firsthand that radiation ravages all living things in its own way. But no one wonders about the deep blue sea. So one day, my grandpappy was egging. It was a foul day. Fog so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. He was stumbling along and then he heard a tremendous clamoring. From the ocean. Like nothing he'd ever heard before or since. He stood still for a long time. The fog cleared for a brief moment, and that's when he saw the outline of the great behemoth. Massive. Bigger than anything you or I will ever see. Old Peg. A giant blue ghoul whale. A ghoul whale? Yeah. As the fog gathered, he saw that great beast emerge back into the deep, and my grandpappy fled for the first and last time in his life. Ask any of the old-timers, and they'll all agree. Old Peg, right outside the harbor. Dark and ominous things swim the deep.
So it seems that at least a couple of people in Fallout have heard of these spooky whales in the ocean, but we still have no first-hand evidence of Old Peg's existence. Maybe, for example, what the fishermen thought was a giant ghoul whale was actually nothing but one of the submarines we know about that sometimes surfaces in the area. Potentially, it's even a case of he said, she said, where the original conversation was centered around a beluga whale, not a ghoul whale, and the message just got mixed up in translation. But there actually is some more compelling evidence as to the truth behind this mystery we can dive into as well. First of all, in the Fallout 4 Far Harbor DLC, littered across the beaches are multiple massive bones and remains which seem to allude to the idea that Old Peg and his brothers and sisters may not just be a myth. But even more damning, in some of the unused game asset files in Fallout 4 as well, we can even find entire models and art for the alleged monster. A massive whale-dolphin hybrid with razor-sharp teeth, similar to the dollfish native to Boston that mutated at the hands of radiation. On top of this though, and the best evidence we have for Old Peg being real, is the cut content surrounding a quest known as 20 Leagues Under the Sea. Originally planned to be included in the main game of Fallout 4 and cut at some point in production, 20 Leagues Under the Sea would have centered around a fully underwater Bioshock-inspired Vault 120, which had a literal sentient squid as its overseer. In the key art for the actual quest that was completed before the content was cut for the game, we can see a Vault Boy scared and trapped underwater. But even more interestingly, right behind him is the same exact outline and art we see for the supposed ghoul whale assets. Could this mean that the folk tales and stories we hear of the cryptid Old Peg from the caravan guards at Bunker Hill could in fact be the truth? And that somewhere in the dark depths of the ocean is a mutated monstrosity waiting to attack? We may never get a full answer to this mystery, but in my book, this is one cryptid I certainly hope is real. And it makes me wonder what else is out there in the irradiated oceans of Fallout. And also, side note, the next Fallout really needs to capitalize on this underwater vault idea. I think it would be so awesome, and even the mod to add it into Fallout 4 shows just how much potential there really is. When you see a creature like a gulper on a list of Fallout cryptids, you may at first be very confused. And that's because in the world of Fallout, gulpers are the opposite of unknown or mysterious. They appear in almost every game, and for those of you who are unaware, are technically hellbender salamanders that have been mutated by radiation, coming in many shapes and sizes, all the way from baby newts to gulper devourers that are 3 times the size of an adult male and can have different powers. These original gulpers have been in the wasteland ever since the bombs fell, and oftentimes can be found in trees waiting for prey to walk by, after which they pounce and attack. But we aren't here to talk about those types of gulpers, the ones that serve primarily as gun fodder in more amphibious zones in the games. Because we're here to talk about the one type of gulper that is not only the most horrifying, but also for many years on the west coast of California was thought to be nothing more than rumor and superstition: the gargantuan gulper. First unveiled in Season 1 of the Fallout TV show, these amphibious carbuncles have a backstory just as horrifying as their looks. Far and away the biggest of the gulper species we have seen, they can easily go toe-to-toe with Deathclaws or fully armored Brotherhood of Steel warriors, and instead of mostly being found in trees, usually hide deep within river or lake beds in the dark, waiting for prey to swim by, after which they launch themselves at high speeds and eat everything in their path in one gulp. In the Fallout TV show, Lucy encounters one of these monsters and narrowly manages to best it, which gives us some more clues about the creature. First of all, like regular gulpers, the gargantuan variant on the west coast will eat just about everything. As we can see from its mouth, spills out tons of random trinkets and meat and veggies alike. But even more peculiar is what we see if we look inside the pink salamander's mouth. An amalgamation of human toes, fingers, and body parts all mushed together to form a semblance of a tongue and cheekbones, all hinting at the terrifying origin story of this cryptid, which only recently has been confirmed to exist outside of myth. You see, back before the Great War, as we all know, Vault-Tec created over 100 vaults, all based on the idea of human experimentation and trials should the bombs fall. And in the case of Vault 4 in California, the idea was to create the perfect technocracy. Governed entirely by scientists, the Vault would put no limits or restrictions on the types of research that could be done, all to see what would happen if we gave the smartest people in society free rein. Led by Lloyd and Cassandra Hawthorne, the Vault quickly devolved into heinous experimentation and trials to see the effects of radiation on DNA and more, which eventually devolved into letting in outsiders from the wasteland just to use them as real-life guinea pigs in test trials of human experimentation. But maybe the most horrifying of all of these was a set of experiments that led to the creation of the now famed gargantuan gulpers. By forcefully impregnating captured women chained down against their will with genetically engineered embryos, scientists in the Vault, after countless tests, were able to finally succeed. With a video of a pregnant woman in a vat of water giving birth to a sea of baby gargantuan gulpers being eaten alive from her very children the moment they were born, being one of the most trauma-inducing moments in the show. And this perfectly explains why we see human body parts inside the gulper's mouth, and why upon closer inspection, it becomes clear that many parts of the gargantuan gulper's body seem to be a mix of axolotl and human. But really, more than anything, it goes to show that maybe the scariest creatures in the entire Fallout universe aren't the cryptids, but rather human beings. Scientists or twisted people alike that stop at nothing to use each other for their own personal gain or knowledge, that wind up creating hellspawn like the gargantuan gulpers found in and around post-nuked Los Angeles. In my opinion, usually the most fascinating part of any mystery in games comes from the things we don't know rather than what we do. And in terms of cryptids with little known about them in the Fallout universe, few have less information than the elusive horned kangaroos. Only discoverable as bones in both Fallout 1 and 2, these skeletal remains give the following message when inspected in both titles. You think these might be horned kangaroo bones, but you cannot be sure. They are too weathered to make the final determination. And yet, even with just these two sentences, so much mystery is opened up. First of all, for almost all denizens of the Fallout universe, they would not believe you if you told them horned kangaroos actually exist. So the question then obviously comes up, where did these things come from? One theory is that they could have been shipped over from post-war Australia at some point, but then you have to wonder about the logistics of how this even got done. Could there be an entire post-war naval trade network being set up unbeknownst to us in most of the games? That seems unlikely given we play on many of the coasts in multiple of the Fallout games throughout multiple decades. So another theory might hold even more weight. Maybe these kangaroos are actually another result of an experiment being done either by Vault-Tec or the Enclave on kangaroos to turn them into war machines with horns that could charge on the front lines. Potentially, these skeletal remains aren't even kangaroos with horns, but something entirely different. Potentially a Cthulhian entity or ancient race of cosmic beings that have lived underground for thousands of years as kangaroo people, plotting the demise of all of humanity in Fallout 1 and 2 that we only catch a small glimpse of in the original games. Probably not, but don't lie, that would make for a killer vault in Fallout 5. And by the way, in 2003, what researchers presumed are real horned kangaroo bones were unearthed in the Nullarbor caves of Australia. An oral history of giant horned kangaroos dates back even thousands of years, with multiple cave paintings depicting these furry mammals in their heyday.